Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility alongside Steven Reid at the other end of the Zoom. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Studio Albums, or Ranking the Albums, the Studio Albums. We're talking about the studio albums today of neo-prog legends. I know they get kind of saddled with that tag, Marillion. I would say in recent weeks, this is probably the band that has been asked for the most on this channel, probably because I opened my big mouth a month or so ago saying we were going to do a Marillion show, and we haven't delivered yet. So here's the first of two that we're going to do. We got another, Steve Fleck is actually going to join me to do the top 10 songs, which we're still trying to schedule that. But Steven Reid actually lit up when I said, you want to do an album ranking Marillion? He's like, yes, indeed. So they have a lot of albums. We're going to, because it's the two of us, and, you know, if we were to rank 17, 18 albums, we'd be here for an hour and a half. So we decided to do our top 10, okay, out of their whole studio catalog. Steven may throw a couple of honorable mentions at the end, but I'm going to have Steven kick it off with his number 10.
Okay, so Marillion. Number 10 is Happiness is the Road. Okay, so this is 2008. We're deep into the Hogarth era of the band. This is the fancy spangled 2-disc book version. I'm a sucker for Marillion's fantastic, pre-order things. They pioneered the whole thing, the whole idea. Probably pioneered it. They take the credit for it, and why not if it's coming your way? So this is really nice. The double album is the way to go, in my opinion, if you can get it. It's a really varied album. I think that it shows some influences that they don't necessarily show all the time. There's a lot of kind of 60s influences, a bit of soul involved in this, but it's still a Marillion album. And if you like, I love Steve Hogarth's vocals. I think that he's probably one of the, no pun intended, unsung vocalists of recent years. He can do intimate and he can do huge, and he can go from the two, from 1 second to the next. And live, I think he's just absolutely incredible. Arguably a better single album here, but when there's things like This Train Is My Life, Nothing Fills the Hole, which goes into a song called Woke Up, which is just one of those moments in an album that you wait for. Just the intro of that song is fantastic. And Happiness is the Road, the title track on this, is a great song when they play it live. I've seen them close the show with that song a couple of times, and it's one of those moments where the song keeps going after the band go off the stage because the fans keep singing it, and that holds something special for me. It's also very cool. That's my first one. That's number 10.
There you go. All right, I should probably just get it out of the way right now. All right, before we go on. All right, I will be honest with everybody watching this and with my co-host. I think Steve Hogarth is a very fine singer. I've seen them live with him. He's got a great voice, great stage presence, great personality, good songwriter, all that kind of stuff. I have really lost interest in the band, though, in recent years, because for me, I'm someone who's listened to Marillion since the beginning. And while I like a lot of the earlier Hogarth albums, their last probably like half a dozen releases or close to it don't do a hell of a lot for me. I got them. Don't listen to them much. Yes, there's good material on all of them. It's a different band. It's a really different band than they were.
The T-shirts tell a story, Peter.
Yeah, exactly. So in saying that, my number 10 is Marbles from 2004. And honestly, this is probably the last Hogarth era album that I really can say that I kind of enjoy. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, that Pardo guy is off his rocker. All their albums are great. I get it. I don't hate any of the more recent albums. I just, honestly, they don't interest me much. But this is a very fine album. I was still very much on board with what was going on. I missed the Fish era, but I was pretty much into the Marillion stuff up to this point. I mean, it's got The Invisible Man on it. Great song. The Only Unforgivable Thing, Ocean Cloud, the various Marbles tracks and what have you. This is the 2-disc set right here. A lot of good stuff on here. This band went from being a very dramatic kind of Genesis-y type band, right, with a lead singer who was, I mean, let's face it, Fish was, he was a presence on his own, right? I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with. And, musically speaking, they play very different music back in the beginning. They're now like this kind of like atmospheric, melodic rock band. Okay. Yep. Not much prog anymore. I really don't think of them as a prog band anymore. Maybe a little bit of elements, right?
I don't think there's traditional prog in them. I don't
Yeah,
think
it's different, you know. Like a lot of
say
people say, it's like, well, current Marillion, newer Marillion has more in common with like Radiohead and maybe some Porcupine Tree and things like and that sort of thing. And I get that. All right, I get it. I've just found that kind of the direction they've been going for the last probably 8-10 years doesn't really do a lot for me anymore. You know, you can't force yourself to like something. That's the problem.
absolutely not. Couldn't
And
agree.
you know, I've been listening to the Hogarth era for a long time, since the beginning. And I reached a point with it where I was like, all right, this band just isn't clicking for me anymore. It happens, right? It happens.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does.
So
Yeah.
that's my number 10, a fine album, Marillion, Marbles. And I always like that album cover quite a bit.
So, well, my number 9, and I suppose, and it's not the most obvious comparison, but I'll throw Van Halen in there. Okay, because there was Van Halen and there was Van Hagar. And to me, I like both of those versions of that band. Sorry, Gary Sharon, not so keen on that, but there you go. But to me, I can separate the two. Yeah, when Hagar was there, they played material from both, and with Hogarth and Marillion, they've gone back to playing material from both. They did definitely go through a phase where it seemed to be they just wouldn't do it. If it wasn't a Hogarth era song, they weren't going to play it live unless it was a convention or a fan thing, one of the weekends that they do, and it was something special. And I can respect that because that was then and this is now. But to me, I will admit that much though, I'm a massive fan of the whole of Marillion's catalogue, with a few bumps along the way. That the band that did number 9, which is Fugazi, well, that to me is a different band from the band that they are now. I mean, obviously.
Oh, it's completely different. Yeah,
Totally
there's
different.
nothing remotely
Yeah.
similar other than some of the guys in the band. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, Rothery still at times has the same guitar sound, but he did make an effort to move away from that. With mixed success at one point, I think. But yeah, beyond that, they're a completely different band. And whether that is a tale of two singers, I know for a lot of people it is a tale of two singers. Some of my friends just can't connect with the guy that replaced Fish. I mean, we're talking decades ago now, so
it's a long time ago.
It obviously was a tough gig to follow. I think he's done an amazing, miraculous job of it. I can't tell you how much I connect with Hogarth, especially live. I think he's incredible. But Fugazi is early in the other direction. Ian Mosley's first album with a band, an incredible drummer who had a great track list before that of projects with Steve Hackett. And his book, Do I Owe You Money, which I only read a couple of weeks ago, is very good. It's more anecdotes and stories, but the guy lived. He had lived long before Marillion came along and obviously revolutionised things for him to some extent. I mean, I've ranked this at 9, so it's in the top half or just about there. So I still really like this album. I do class it as underrated, but more because for me, the other 3 Fish albums, which tells you where they're going to come in here, just tower above it more than anything else. It does feel like a second album to some extent. However, you've got a sassing on it, which is just fantastic. And I've taken a liberty. We've got Punch and Judy here, and we've got a sassing here. I'm a sucker for Mark Wilkinson's artwork.
That's. I was just gonna say that stuff is great. I don't have either of those. I'm looking at those. I'm like, oh, look at that.
I've got more to show. Put it that way, right? I do, and that's something that the band couldn't replicate. Do you know? Fish took Mark Wilkinson with them, or they stayed together. They had to do something different. I understand that. They lost something massive when they didn't have the ability to have artwork as good as that on the back of your single. Do you know? And just an amazing artist, an amazing, band connection. I love it when you look at something and immediately know who it is and it tells you a story. And I like, things that come and go and you connect with them. But there's other songs on there too. There's Incubus. There's Jigsaw, which is a kind of strange little fragile sort of song that says a lot about Fish, I think. It's very idiosyncratic. It's quite involved. It's a bit pretentious, which says a lot about Fish. That's actually something I've written quite a lot with the Fish stuff. I love the guy to bits. I love his material, but there's a bit there. He admits himself there's some things he's written that you kind of think, should I have done that? We all did things like that when we were younger, let's be honest. Yep. But tracks like Emerald Lies and She Chameleon, it's maybe just a little unsure in places as an album, but it's still a cracking album.
It's a little bit of a darker album, I think. Although, I mean, let's face it, those first 4 albums are kind of dark and serious in tone, right?
Yeah, it's not a band that's skipping with happiness, is it?
Yeah. Before I go on to my number 9, I know we're kind of talking a lot, and I think that's a good thing. But I also think you talk about a tale of two bands. And I think another guy who's very responsible for the kind of the sound shift in this band is Mark Kelly, because if you listen to those early albums and you listen to what he adds to the band's music the last 30 years, it's almost like two different guys, right? He was going for a different 70s style keyboard texture thing on the early albums, and it's much more modern sounding now. It's very, very different.
I think there's an argument that, though, that if they hadn't evolved, that they maybe wouldn't have still been, as relevant to the fans as they are. I know that they're not a massive chart band, although recent albums have done well, again, it has to be said. But I suppose, arguably, there's only so many times that you can go back to a sound that was 10 years before they formed, realistically. So they had to evolve, but also the way they write has evolved. I mean, they've always jammed, which for a prog band's maybe a bit odd, but they've always jammed, and that's kind of how they've done it. But now they jam, and then they piece together the jams. And it's not them that's doing it. I'm going to get the name wrong. I think it's Mike Hunter that does that. He's another member of the band to some extent, which even as a massive fan, I find a bit odd that they can jam for weeks on end, and then he goes and takes pieces and puts it together, and they come back and go, oh, we've got a song. And I meant that's maybe a bit simplistic. I appreciate maybe doing them down a bit with that. It's not meant to sound maybe the way that it has. But that, as someone who doesn't write songs, to be fair, just feels a bit unusual. But to me, it works. But it shows the difference, I think, between what they did and what they're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. And the other point I wanted to make, you threw out the little singles and things like that, and the Mark's wonderful artwork and all that kind of stuff. I think early part of their career, they had an image. Yeah. They had merchandise that had an image.
Yeah.
Fish left. The band kind of changed. They've become kind of faceless for about 25 years now. When you really think about it, you look at their albums, very rarely do they have their pictures on the albums. The covers are kind of nondescript. Whereas the early album, you had the great artwork on it, and everything about the band. Fish was a larger than life character, and wore the costumes and all those things, and makeup and all that kind of stuff. They're not like that at all. So it's like one extreme to the other, right?
I think that what they've done and how they've done it, I don't know, but what they've done is they've gone from that kind of larger than life image that captured maybe more of a broader public imagination. Fish was a bit of a celebrity for a period, and quite rightly so, because he's a fascinating guy. But now what they seem to have done is, they've lost a lot of people along the way, but they've gained, I think, more along the way as well. And their fan base is so fanatical. That's the thing for me. I mean, we mentioned before we came on air here that I'm a member of the web. I read the magazine 4 times a year. I get the free CD or DVD that comes along with that once a year. Thoroughly look forward to it. But the dedication that the fan base puts in, and the miles that they'll travel to go and see their band and meet their band, and how many times that they do that. And they've created as close to a family as I think that a fan base can be. Yeah. And when a band can, draw people from across the world to come and see them in the Royal Albert Hall, not just once, but more than once, the connection seems to be very, very strong in a way that most bands probably could only ever dream of.
Yeah, true.
Even bands that are much bigger than them.
Yep. And I wonder too, I think that they built up that loyal fan base they have built up post Fish. Mm-hmm. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of the real fanatical Fish era fans might have already left. Okay. But they brought a lot of new ones in that may not be like 70s progressive rock fans. And that's okay. Right. So very interesting stuff. And I do want to say, and I mean this with all love and everything, I love the way you Scots say Fish. I absolutely love it. When you watch an interview with him, he says it exactly like you do.
That's what it's just exactly you pronounce it.
I'm here saying fish. It's not quite as dramatic as fish, the way you say it. I just love it. So anyway, I wanted to throw that out.
Very good version of it. There you go. That's good.
I've had a lot of practice, you know, because like my friends and I who have been following this band for so long, whenever we talk, it's like, oh, it's fresh, you know. It's anyway, back to the ranking, and I've derailed the conversation for quite a bit. So my number 9 is 1991's Holidays in Eden. And I think this, in a perfect world, could have been the album that broke them here in the States. And I know they kind of wanted that, but you know what? They were on IRS Records. IRS Records, quite frankly, is not going to do shit for anybody here in this country. And it's a shame, because I remember when this album came out, I'm like, a good, you know, again, not like the Fish stuff, but but a lot of really good, catchy songs on here that I think, given that time period, could have, you know, I mean, Cover My Eyes, right? Splintering Heart.
Yeah.
The title track is great, right? How Can It Hurt? You know, Dry Land. So many. The Rakes Progress. You got all. Look at that. So you got all the stuff.
I've got a lot of Marillion stuff.
This is a very accessible, commercial sounding, catchy album with just a little bit of the prog rock touches. But I just, man, this was a missed opportunity. Not for the band, because they cranked it out. They put it together. This is a missed opportunity because, you know, the record label they were on, the lack of resources of IRS Records, I don't know. But I remember, like, my friends and I got this, and we were like, oh yeah, this is going to do it for them. I saw them on this tour, and it's like, and just, you know, some of these songs should have been on MTV. I mean, just, you know what I'm saying? It just seemed like this should have broke them big time.
Now, I'll be honest with you, that's giving away spoilers now. It hasn't made my top 10. That's the band that the album kind of view. That's the album that the band kind of view as the compromise, because EMI wanted hits, so they allowed themselves to go and write an album of, as you say, songs that should have broke them in America. Realistically,
they did it well, though. That's what I'm saying. Even though this really wasn't their preference to do, they did a damn good job. And this should have, whether it's how they wanted it to go or not, as a fan and as someone who wanted this band to be big, even if it is kind of like not really in the style that's deep down here for them, they should have made a lot of money on this, because, you know, this band has struggled to make money over the years. They're not rich by any means, these guys. No. I mean, I'm sure they're comfortable, but this should have put them in that trajectory, and it didn't. And it's just a shame, because I've seen a lot of bands over the years who have had excellent albums, but they wound up on a label that just didn't know what to do with them. And that's what happened here, at least here in this country.
Well, even over here, to be fair, because obviously they had, you know, the 3 albums before that had, well, literally the 2 last Fish albums had seen them rise rapidly to, you know, suddenly people were naming their kids after their songs, you know, and all this sort of stuff. Another thing that not many bands can really say. But a good friend of mine went to see Marillion on that tour, on the Holidays tour, and he actually went to Wembley Arena to see them. And he said it was embarrassing because it was half empty. Wow. So, you know, so already the bubble had burst over here by that stage. And that was just, I think that they had just been pushed into something that they didn't really necessarily believe in. But I think the label had stopped believing in them too, even EMI over here. I mean, it was the beginning of the end for them with EMI at that stage, because it didn't do what they would hoped it was going to, or even maintain what had been there before. But there's still lots of great stuff on it. And that tells you how much I like the band, because it hasn't made my top 10.
Yeah.
So what has, though?
Your number 8.
So this is my fancy version of Marbles that we've got. I see them again.
Wow.
Now, I'm saying that, you know, the artwork's not so great in this era, but the artwork is very effective here, it has to be said. And you can go through the whole book, and it connects through in a way that the album does too, because it's very much a journey. Marbles, that you revisit the same kind of themes and songs throughout the double album, which is something that they haven't really played with elsewhere. It was the one that reaffirmed how much I liked them. To me, they had struggled a little bit, you know, up until that point. Probably from maybe 2 or 3 albums before that, where I just kind of lost a bit of faith with them. It took me a while to appreciate some of, you know, those albums that fell into that era. But Marbles was one that, I don't know why, I just connected with bits and bobs that I'd heard. I did the pre-order, and it's just got so much atmosphere. There are not many bands that can build a song and then build a song and then build a song and then build the song. And Marillion have that ability to just take it a step further and a step further, and you think, we must be there now. We must be there now. And they keep going. And Marbles is filled with moments like that. You've got Ocean Cloud, you've got Neverland, but then you've got, you know, The Invisible Man, Fantastic Place, Don't Hurt Yourself, You're Gone, songs that you can sing along with as well. So as you say, they've become something else by this stage, but Marbles is a real statement for me. Really like it, I have to say.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good album. I agree. My number 8 from 1997. I'm going to go with This Strange Engine.
Right.
Which again, some really strong tracks on here, and I think, you know, by this time they're still trying to throw a bone to the old school fans, because like all their albums around this kind, you know, they were throwing a lengthy track, and they'll, you know, they'll kind of really mix it up variety wise. But I think, you know, Man of a Thousand Faces, really good song. Estonia, great track. You know, Memory of Water, Accidental Man. I think it's a very kind of pleasing to the ears album. It's a very melodic album.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, there's also some sing-along stuff on here. And I think this album has some really good vocals from Hogarth, who, again, I agree, fantastic singer. I like him a lot. And I think, you know, he really fits with this band in the direction they've gone to. So that's my choice for number 8.
The interesting thing for me is I've got it here. This is another one that's not made my top 10, to be honest.
Wow. Okay.
But the little story for me that kind of summed up. It's interesting how a lot of the fans that had been there from the early days, some disconnected immediately when Fish left. They were Fish fans, you know. Yeah. And I went to see both bands on the first tour post the split. And there were people who were at the Fish gig that were not going to go and see Marillion. And there were people at the Marillion gig who were not going to go and see Fish, you know. One of my good friends, different good friend, I've got lots of friends that like Marillion, went to see them up till this point, and then it's the song Hope for the Future, and that's the one that's kind of got, you know, the little calypso stuff and all that. And he came back from that gig and he said, if I wanted to go and see Gloria Estefan, I would. And that was him. He was out. He was done at that stage, and I don't think he's ever gone back. And it's interesting how this era does just divide people so much. It does. But anyway, sorry. I digress. Okay, so as I tend to. So number 7 for me, and this is the fancy new, you know, extended, as they're doing with this EMI, the whole EMI era. So you've got 4 discs here and a DVD or a Blu-ray, should I say? This is Afraid of Sunlight. This to me is probably the sleeper in their catalogue. This is a phenomenal album. Same again, there's a bit of 60s here. There's a bit of a pop vibe. Gazpacho, Cannibal Surf Babe. You've got Beautiful, which is just a nice little, you know, it's a nice little pop song more than anything else. And I mean, they did a version at one point with a school choir, you know, which was interesting. It was a lovely idea, to be fair. I think it was a charity thing too, so I'm maybe being a bit unkind. It's a
charming song nonetheless.
It is a charming song, yes. And that was a charming version too, just maybe too charming. It's maybe a bit zany in places for people. I think this album's a bit out there, especially for what was a prog band. But Afraid of Sunrise, Out of This World, Afraid of Sunlight, and especially King. They played King.
King is fantastic. Oh, yeah.
Just incredible. And this is one of the albums for me that if anyone is interested in trying to understand what the Hogarth era of the band is about, I would suggest that this is one of the places to go. It is accessible, but it also stretches things out a little bit too. And this version is very smart indeed.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say too much because I'm going to get to it in a minute. But my number 7, that we are up to number 7, right? There are going to be people who are going to rank this a little higher, and I totally get that because it's damn good. But 1994's Brave. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, this is the concept album to rival Misplaced Childhood. That's basically what a lot of people are saying this came out. And I think when you talk about like the great concept albums from this era, this one probably doesn't get mentioned enough. I mean, this is like dramatic, cinematic, you know, this is a pretty big achievement. And, you know, I listened to this a ton when it first came out, but it's not an easy listen. This is not like Afraid of Sunlight or Holidays in Eden. You don't just put this on and expect a couple of, yeah, I remember. This is like a sit down and listen to the whole thing and like immerse yourself in the lyrics.
Experience.
It is. And I think the band, this is probably one of the band's most kind of textured album from a musical perspective. Good keyboard layers on here, some tasty Rothery soloing. And then you got, Hogarth, or H, however you want to call him, playing all these parts and all this kind of stuff. Really, really good job. So this got a lot of play amongst my little group of friends back in the day when this came out. And, I still like to put it on from time to time. I think it's a very good one.
Great album. Yes, indeed. So number 6 for me, and to echo you, I think a lot of people would put this higher, but I'm going to the debut album.
Wow.
But this is there we go, maybe see that a bit better there. So this is Script for a Jester's Tear. This is a phenomenal achievement for a debut album, I think.
That looks like one of those Jethro Tull sets that I have. It's the same deal, right? It's got the book in it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Look at that. Awesome. Wow.
They're redoing the whole EMI era of the band in this, and I'm buying them all as they come out, to be fair. The imagery and the artwork and the way it's presented in these are absolutely fantastic. They've done a really good job.
I may have to get those.
This will be the last time that they do the catalogue.
Yeah.
So they're doing it properly. And they all come on the Blu-ray disc. They all come with a documentary. So you actually get to sit down with the band. And what I quite like is the format tends to be slightly different. So you get one of the first couple are kind of like those classic album shows where they sit at the mixing desk and they fade things in, fade things out, and they talk about how they wrote together. Fish sits in with them on some of these. They start with Misplaced Childhood, but he sits in, and the dynamic is fascinating because he dominates them now. He talks, they all stop. It's fascinating. So to read the language that goes on.
Oh, I need to get these.
It's really good.
Wow.
And then as they've gone through them, so for this era, they're not sitting together, interestingly. Fish is at home in his studio. Mick Pointer, who was the drummer at this stage, who's gone on to be in Arena, he is, because he was unceremoniously ditched from his own band at the end of this tour. That live show from the web is on this as well. But yeah, these are great versions. These come highly recommended. If anyone's interested in Marillion, these versions are excellent. They do have a couple of things that they don't catch all of the material from the time, and they don't catch all the material from the earlier remix albums, unfortunately. But I think there's going to be licensing issues or cost cutting to some extent going on. But these are special. But anyway, sorry, this is going to go on forever tonight. Sorry. So Script, this is I think an incredible debut, and because this came out quite recently, I have had a chance to revisit that era. I mean, same again. Singles from the time, Garden Party. That's a tremendous song. You can see how loved these have been over the years. These are not in great condition. These are not collectors.
Margaret, what a great song, Margaret. Oh man, look at this. You're killing me with these, man. You're killing me.
And then of course, I'll go a little bit further back. This is not on the album, but Market Square Heroes.
Oh yeah, I love Market Square Heroes.
And that's just, I still love that song. It just, the hairs on the back of my neck when that song kicks in is just phenomenal. But for Script, you've got Garden Party, which is obviously slightly extended on the album. You've got Chelsea Monday, Forgotten Sons, The Web. You've got the title track. It's just got such depth. The lyrics are amazing. Same again, as you say, all the albums at this stage are dark. There's not much that's singing cheerful stuff, whether it's about religion, whether it's about war, whether it's about Fish talking about himself as he does tend to. I quite like that, to be fair. It's peeling away layers and revealing things that you maybe didn't want to hear, but once you do, you can't stop wanting to hear them. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a great album. I mean, it's number 6, and I'm telling you how great an album it is. So,
and that's why Market Square Heroes doesn't fit on that album, because it's not dark enough. Market Square Heroes is like completely different, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yes.
All right, my number 6 you've already talked about from 1995, Afraid of Sunlight. You kind of said it all. I think that there are some songs on here that are top shelf.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it ranks so high for me, because, when you got, Cannibal Surf Babe, notwithstanding, Gaspacho and The title track, the title track is so good. Might be my favorite performance of Hogarth on any of these albums.
Yep.
Just, there's in King. I mean, there's probably 4, maybe 5 tracks on here that are just so spectacular that it kind of, because I was tossed between these two in line here. And that's why this one, because of those couple of tracks, just inches above Brave for me. So that's my number 6. The top 5, here we go. The big players, the big boys.
It is the big boys, and arguably, although it's number 5, this is the biggest boy, and this is Misplaced Childhood. There you go, shocked look on your face there, Peter. I think I've just heard most Marillion fans drop their tea. Do you know? That will be a shocker to them. I've got to be honest and say that there's part of my baggage comes along with that, because as a Marillion fan, I'll be honest and say that I've heard Kaylee, Lavender, and Heart of Lothian, which we have here. I've heard those songs probably more than anyone ever needs to hear any songs.
Yeah.
And now, unless they reel them out live, which they did in Edinburgh, 2 or 3 years ago, where I admit to have going wild. I went absolutely wild at the end of it. I find them quite difficult to place in that album now, because I've heard them in isolation so often. Kaylee's still a radio song over here, as to be said. You still hear it a lot, but that's a testament to how good it is. It couldn't quite get to number 1, but it got to number 2. And I always kind of look now as Misplaced Childhood as the unintentional hits album. I mean, it's a concept album that only stops because it was recorded for vinyl. Do you know, and you shouldn't have hits coming from an album like that, but there's choruses there, and you can sing along. But Fish is just laying it out, isn't he? He's just telling you everything that about him and about his relationships and about his life, and it's an incredible achievement. And Rothery on it is just outstanding, it has to be said. That's maybe the guitar album from him at that stage. I mean, he's incredible in the first 2, but by the time
Clutching also, I mean, it's those first 4. I mean, yeah,
it's just incredible. But and same again. I mean, you've got Bittersweet, you've got Blind Curve. It is a majestic album, and it's a great journey. And I could probably very badly sing it every word on it, because I did live with it constantly for a good couple of years after it was released. But it just hasn't quite managed to hold the same affection in my heart, for reasons probably not of its fault, to be honest.
But that happens sometimes. I mean, people our age, we grow up with a lot of these albums, and sometimes after 30, 40 years, you're like, you know what? This album just doesn't affect me as much as it did 20 years ago, 25 years. It happens. I mean, I go through that all the time. So I totally get where you're coming from. But the fact that it's number 5 still says a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Says a lot.
A lot of albums, yeah.
Yeah. So my number 5 is where it all began with Mr. H. Season's End. This is a pretty damn special album, I think. And you might know a little bit better than me. A lot of this was already kind of in the works from a songwriting perspective while Fish was still in the band, from what I understand.
Yes, if you have, well, I've not got it here, but the remix version of Clutching at Straws from a good 2 years ago now, its bonus disc had the demos that the band kind of classed as Misplaced Childhood 2, which when they listened back to it, they kind of went, yeah, right, okay, we've just done the same album again. But what that bonus disc shows is a lot of stuff that showed up on Season's End, but also quite a lot of stuff that showed up on Vigil and the Wilderness of Mirrors with Fish, and also I think even into Internal Exile for him, lyrically, and hearing it kind of come together from those two is odd. And let's just say they were right to go with something else, that has to be said. It's an interesting listen, but there's nothing there that makes you think that's what they should have done instead of Clutching at Straws.
Yeah. I think for me, being such a Fish era fan, when this came out, I was kind of like, I was like, okay, let's see what this is all about. Because how do you replace this guy? And then you listen to this and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good and not that much different. Yeah, he's not Fish, but the title track, Easter, Berlin, Hooks in You. I mean, the King of Sunset Town. It's like, this is pretty damn good. This is pretty damn good.
Hooks in You. That was an odd single.
Yeah, well, because it's not unlike anything else on the album or even that they've done before. I mean, that was kind of like,
kind
of almost like
to introduce a new singer. I remember buying this at the time, as you can tell, and hearing Hogarth sing what, in essence, is a heavy metal song.
I was just going to say, it's kind of like almost like a hair metal song, right?
No, and thinking, what have they done?
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to accept it. After me, the B-side, that's a different kettle of fish entirely. No pun intended there. There you go. And that made me think, oh, okay, hold on. I'll stick with this. I love this song now. When he play it live, it absolutely hits home. But uninvited guest, and I've got different versions of Easter and things like that here too.
Yeah, the uninvited guest is great. And man, I remember the first time seeing them with Hogarth and the band, and watching him sing Easter, and then Season's End, and it's just heart-wrenchingly gorgeous stuff, right? I mean, just vocally, and they're just great songs. I mean, I think for me, both of those tunes, if I was to put 10, like my top 10 favorite Marillion songs, my gut would tell me they have to all be Fish era songs, but I'm like, I gotta squeeze one of those two songs on there, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my number 5. It's damn good.
So number 4 for me comes, well, I was going to say right up to date, but I think we're 2016 for, well, it says Fear on the front and it's always shortened to Fear, but the band went to great pains at the time to insist that it's called Fuck Everyone and Run, because it's a comment on the world. Let's not go down that path, because I think they're more right now than they were 4 years ago. But this is an achievement, this album. This is something special. It's to see a renaissance for a band in such a way, certainly in the UK. Suddenly they're on their cover of Prog, they're getting covered in classic rock again in a way that they haven't done in years. But you're suddenly seeing them on the television and things like that again, which we haven't done for decades. And that's just because of the depth of what's on here. It's an incredible album that has a message and it has a flow to it, but it hits hard. This is a band now who they're almost a sort of, it's like going back to Dylan, who was always had a message to tell you, comment on society and the world, and they're not just shoving their ideas down your throat, but there's a relevance here that arguably they haven't had until maybe the last couple of albums. They've suddenly making political comment and things like that. And I can take or leave that with a lot of bands, but the stuff on here is amazing. I mean, there's New Kings, which is 16 minutes long, The Leavers, which is 19 minutes long, you've got El Dorado, which is 16 minutes long, and the short songs, White Paper, 7 minutes long, Living in Fear is 6 minutes long. Tell me this isn't prog. This is prog. It's not prog, it's progressive. And that to me is where I think that the fans from before, I understand why they now look at this and go, but it's not prog. Because it's not prog, but it is progressive. But this to me, this is a band playing their own rules, doing it their own way. They don't really care what anybody thinks, but they're quite pleased when people like it. And that's quite a privileged place that they've managed to work themselves to. As you said earlier, they're probably not rich. Do you know? I'm sure they are comfortable. I'm more than happy to think that they are comfortable. I do hope so. But they go out under their own rules. They do their own things. And because they've got that loyal fan base now, they can do that. And nobody can tell them no. It's a great place to be. And that results in an album as good as this, in my opinion.
I kind of liken them, and they don't sound anything alike each other. But based on kind of what you said and the fact that they have these both loyal fan bases, Dream Theater and Marillion. Neither one of those bands are rich. Neither one of them, both have albums that sell. They tour and people come to see them no matter where they play. And, the fans are always very critical about everything they do. But even I think, and I know both bands respect each other because I think they played shows together and, Portnoy's and Transatlantic with Pete Pardo. So, there's a camaraderie there. And I think there's similarities in a weird way in both bands. So I don't know.
Yep.
My number 4. Yeah, exactly. So, and I think they both, at the end of the day, when both bands decide, okay, we're ready to call it quits, they can probably look back on their career and say, you know what, we did okay.
Yeah.
And maybe didn't make millions and millions and millions, but you know what? They had a loyal fan base that bought their records. They toyed with levels of success. They always drew on the road. That's a good thing, and their music will always be remembered. So that's important. So Fugazi from 1984, their second album comes in number 4 for me. Yeah, out of the first 4 albums, this is probably, and not by much, my least favorite of the 4, but it's still great. This is easily probably the darkest of the 4 of them, I guess. I don't know, but Assassin, like you mentioned, punch, punch, punch. And Jude, I mean, come on, just so catchy. Jigsaw, Emerald Eyes, She Chameleon, the wonderful Incubus, the title track, Fugazi. I love watching the old, you can go catch some old clips of them playing live back in like, 82 or something like that with 83 with the Fish wearing like the Peter Gabriel makeup and the war costume and all that kind of stuff, singing Fugazi. And it's like, oh man, how cool is that? I would have loved to have been, in the audience to see one of those shows.
Do you know, I never saw them with Fish.
Me neither. Yeah,
just not quite old enough to have seen them with Fish.
I had an opportunity.
So did I.
My good friend. Well, I was going to college actually, and not too far from where I live. And there's a little club. It's like the only rock club in this entire area. At the time it was called the Last Chance Saloon. Mm-hmm. And my buddy Kirk said to me one day, because I wasn't listening to them from the very first 2 records. I kind of jumped on board with Misplaced Childhood, but he's like, "Hey, Marillion's playing at the Last Chance Saloon. You want to go?" And I was like, I'm tempted, but you know what? There's this keg party happening, and I think I'm going to go to that. And I wound up not going, and it was like 10 minutes away, and I should have went. And that was the only opportunity I ever had. So, oh well.
Yeah, I don't even have as good an excuse. I had friends.
At least I have the Lorelei DVD to watch over and over and over again, and that's okay, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So. Yeah, I just had the opportunity to go to the Clutching at Straws tour and decided, in my wisdom, I'll leave this one. I'll go see them next time.
No, next time. Sorry,
that didn't work out, really, did it? And I've seen them. I don't know how many times since, and Fish too, but I never saw them together. So there you go. That is a regret. That is a regret. But there you go. So number 3 for me is Season's End. This is 1989, so at the risk of giving away far too much about myself, I was 16 at this stage. So this is, to me, that's probably the age where music possibly not means the most. Music still means as much to me now as it did then. But I think albums maybe just took a hold of you in a different way back then. And I must admit, it took me a long time to buy it because a friend of mine bought it on day of release, let me keep it at work. I kept it safe, but I was allowed away from work before he was. So I must admit, I took it home and recorded it before he ever got a chance to listen to it, which he was not happy with. So I listened to a cassette copy of it for years and years and years, and then bought the album. I've got a vinyl version of it too now. So this was a companion of mine. I travelled with this album. I walked everywhere with it. And it touched my soul, and it still does. This is one that I go back to, and it just makes the same impact on me now as it did then. The King of Sunset Town is, I think, one of the best album openers that you could hope for. It's atmospheric at the start, and it builds, and it's slow, but it's uplifting, and it's just, and right from the off, Hogarth meant it. You just knew this was a guy, he was given an opportunity, and he was going to take it. And he grasped it with both hands, and he was incredible on that tour. As I say, first time I saw them, he let the crowd sing the Fish stuff. Basically, he climbed up to the speakers at the side of the stage for a bit of show, and let the crowd sing Market Square Heroes as he climbed and did something to say, "I'm not going to sing this song, but I'm going to let you guys do it instead." And it was just incredible. But I mean, I could talk about every song on this album, as you say. Easter, just incredible. The Space. After Me Again, which is, I don't actually think it's on the vinyl version, but Berlin, Holloway Girl, Season's End, love it. I absolutely adore this album, and it's not even my number 1, but I absolutely adore this album, I have to say. It's just a moving experience. Love it.
Yep. I totally agree. Great album. My favorite with him in the band. So it happens to be the first one. My number 3, I tossed around juggling my number 2 and my number 3, but I think when it comes down to it, my number 2 just had to be there. But I love this album, the debut.
Yeah,
man, this is a really great debut. I love the artwork. I mean, it's just fantastic. The title track is awesome. He Knows You Know. I mean, I'm trying to say that like him, The Web, Garden Party, Chelsea Monday. Oh, so good. I had Forgotten Sons.
Yeah.
Forgotten Sons.
On that album. I mean, it's funny because Mick Pointer was thrown out for not being good enough. Live, I never saw him until he was with Arena, and he was great with Arena, and is still great with Arena.
Yeah.
But the drums on that album, I think, are fantastic.
Really
It's
good.
fascinating that was his one moment with his own band. So,
Yep. And I made a mistake before. I was talking about the old footage of Fish, with the makeup wearing like the war outfit. That was actually Forgotten Sons, not Fugazi. Forgotten
yep,
Sons is all about the, So
yes,
I kind
yeah,
of
you're right enough. Yep.
mixed those up a little bit. But a fantastic album. I revisit this a lot still to this day.
Yeah, as I say, I listened to it recently with the remix version, and I was surprised by just how well it stands up.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they had all the accusations at the time of just being a Genesis clone, and there's a lot of that in there, to be fair, and they've never been shy of admitting it. But man, did they do it well!
Yeah.
Incredible. So my number 2 is Clutching at Straws. This was a difficult album for them to make. The band is roughly falling apart at this stage. You've got a singer that wanted fame, as Incommunicado will tell you. He wanted fame, he wanted to make it, wanted to be big, and then he got that with Incommunicado. Tells you he doesn't really like it. So, and it's a journey of a lost soul. But the singles on this album, you've got Sugar Mice and you've got Warm Wet Circles. Just phenomenal songs, great atmosphere, an incredibly emotional performance from Fish. Fish arguably isn't a great singer. So,
Right. He's more of a storyteller. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you wanted someone to tell you their own stories, Fish is your man. And I don't think he's ever lost that. He's been better and worse at it over his career, but I don't think he's ever lost that ability to draw you into his stories and tell you his experiences and make you believe that they're yours. And that's quite a skill to have. And he's one of the few frontmen that I've seen that can talk and talk and talk on stage. Says me. I'm not on stage, but I can talk. I do know it, at least I know it. And people listen. And that's a rare skill, it has to be said. Nobody shouts from us, get on with it, or whatever it may be. But it's just a phenomenal album. And I mean, there's songs like Slange on there, which I still love playing the drums along to back when I played the drums. White Russian. It's a dark album. It's a dangerous album. There's Hotel Hobbies. But I think even for an honest singer, that's maybe his most honest album. And there's moments on that where you almost, you reel away from it because you think that's real. So, he's telling you just exactly what it is in his life. And it should have been a humongously uplifting time for him because his band had made it big. We're playing huge shows, we're headlining massive venues, and he clearly didn't like it. And it comes across in the music, and dark music sometimes makes for the best music. And Clutching at Straws, for me, was his pinnacle with a band. And where they'd have gone from there, who knows? Maybe best not to know. I quite like the mystery of that. But yeah, great album.
I agree. We'll talk more about that in a minute. My number 2, I just had to give it to Misplaced Childhood. It's the first one I got from them. It is still an amazing concept album. And, I agree with you. It's like the one track goes into the next. It should never be broken up at all.
Yep.
And yeah, Kaylee and Lavender, great pop songs for the most part. We've all heard them way too many times, but there's just, Heart of Loathing is amazing. Lords of the Backstage, Suda Silk Kimono is still mysterious and kind of, there's still a lot of great stuff on here. And I love the artwork. The production is amazing on this album. And I think it's got some of my favorite keyboard playing from Mark Kelly on this album, from the early albums. And I think, Rothery is just fantastic on here. And it's a great performance from Fish. So, yeah, this is like one of those albums that if you're going to turn someone on to early Marillion who's never really listened to them before, my heart would say Clutching, but honestly, this is the one I steer them towards because it's the most accessible, right? So,
yes, I can understand that. I probably agree with that actually. Even though, same as you, I prefer Clutching. I would say, if you want to go and listen to Fish and get into that era of the band, it's Misplaced Childhood. I'd agree with that. So
I think we both know what our number 1s are going to be. At least I'm pretty sure I know what yours is.
Okay. So my number 1 is Brave. Yeah. This is a real incredible album, I think. This is, as you say, it's dark. I had a little think to myself as I was putting my list together and looking through and listening to these albums again. And Marillion are a band that are just a constant in my listening. They always have been. I don't think I've ever listened to this album with anybody else in the room. Do you know?
Interesting, yeah.
Because it's that dark and it's that deep, and right from the foghorn at the start and I'm getting chills as I talk about it, and that tells you how much this album means to me. Is it immediately, to me, it's too dark to experience with somebody else. There's too much heartbreak and melancholy and danger in here for me to want somebody else to interrupt it by talking to me. How dare they? Do you know? And I went to this tour, and I've seen them play the whole thing live again since then. But man, oh man, and Hogarth at his peak here, and he's still arguably at his peak now, if you like this era of the band. But I mean, he was, he had the pigtails in and the vicar top on and all of this stuff, and he was living it. He absolutely lived this album. And it's difficult. I mean, I've written down Runaway, there's Hard as Love, there's The Hollow Man, Alone Again in the Lap of Luxury, Paper Lies, The Great Escape. As I tend to when I think, well, I like this album, I'll write down the songs I like. I find I've written down the album. But to me, this isn't an album about the songs, it's an album about the album. It's about the story, it's about the journey. It is an incredible concept album. As you said earlier, they talk about great concept albums, and this just doesn't get a mention. And this is one of the concept albums for me. And the fact that I'm uncomfortable listening to it in other people's company, and not because I'm embarrassed by it, but because I connect with it so deeply that I don't want it to be sullied in some way by, not having my full attention to it.
And you have to listen to it the whole way through.
You have to. You absolutely have to. And in ways, when they play individual parts of this, when they play live, I actually wish they'd leave it alone. If they're not going to play it all, I wish they'd leave it alone. When they start to play bits, I just want them to continue, play the whole album now, and then they go into something else. And I love that too. But I always think, we could have got the whole thing there. But yeah, an incredible album. I absolutely love it. They made a film at the time, which is not great, it has to be said, and that was a bit of a shame. It was way too artsy for its own good. It was well-intentioned, shall we say, but then you watch it and think, it just doesn't have the power that the music in the album has itself.
Well, not every great rock concept album needs to be made into a movie.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to let the music be the visuals for everything and not try to put it to film.
Absolutely.
Pink Floyd, I'm talking to you.
Oh dear. So I know what your number one is as well.
Yeah, no surprise here. Anybody who's followed me or knows me know that this is a beloved Marillion album for me, and has been one of my favorite albums in general for the last 30 plus years. I think this is their magnum opus. It's certainly the best thing Fish has ever done, and I love a lot of his solo stuff. But for me, this is, you want to experience Fish, the singer, the storyteller, this is the one. And again, like you said, not happy stuff here. A lot going on behind the scenes here with the band, with him, and the lyrics of this whole album just bleeds kind of like unhappiness and angst and depression and the alcohol and all this kind of stuff. It's all here. But man, there are some just great songs here, even though they all kind of lead into each other. Hotel Hobbies and Warm Wet Circles, to me, is the best stuff this band has ever done. I could listen to, Warm Wet Circles. My wife likes Warm Wet Circles and Hotel Hobbies. that's, that time of the night, man, just for the record, White Russian is amazing, Incommunicado, Slunch, Sugar Mice, the whole thing. It's just incredible. I love it. And I don't know.
The thing for me with that, you're saying that's a singer giving everything that he's got. And they talk about people wearing their heart on their sleeve. He's not wearing his heart on his sleeve in that album. He's ripping his chest open. And just
there you go.
There you go. There's no more, I'm not hiding anything. This is it all. And he gives it the performance and the lyrics. It's incredible.
This is like an example of someone who is crying to be heard, but they don't know how to communicate that. And they're doing it. He's doing it through the music.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm tortured. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to explain it to you, but I'm going to put it into the lyrics and I'm going to sing it for you. And hopefully you can hear it, type of thing.
And you can understand why his bandmates looked at that on the crest of the wave that they were on at that stage and just didn't understand it.
No, they're probably like, we're done after this. This is suicide, right? This career suicide. But
man, did it come to, what an album. What an album. Yeah. Incredible.
I think, I think arguably the two, it's funny that the two albums that we each picked for number one are pretty much concept albums, because
Yeah,
even though this is kind of a loose concept album, I always say it's a concept album. It really
I
is.
think it's a concept
He's
album.
telling his story here, guys. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, it's
I mean,
for me.
he dresses up as Torch, and that's your man at the bar on the cover, but it's not. I mean, Torch is fish,
Yeah.
and he's telling you about his childhood, no pun intended, but he's telling you about his upbringing, but he's telling you about where he is. He's telling you he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know a way out of that. And it's an incredibly honest album, but written in poetry. Fantastic, really good.
And also, too, both of these albums you have to listen to from start to finish. And I will agree with you. Clutching at Straws is not having a party with the guys or having people over for a barbecue by the pool, something you put on. That for me is like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday night. I've had a couple beers, I'm winding down, and I want to just sit down and just listen to something from start to finish to kind of get me in, that real chill mood, but I'm going to pay attention to every word and note of it. It's Clutching at Straws.
Yeah.
And Brave.
Yeah, because Brave for me is a lights out, headphones on album. I just want nothing to get between me and the music that's there. I think I think all of us these days, we concentrate on music some of the time, but music's in the background all of the time. But for me, there are certain albums, and Brave and Clutching at Straws, I can totally get that too, where all you want to do is concentrate on the album. And that's a huge compliment that this band, two different eras, although they're not too far apart, I think 7 years between them, feels like a lifetime in musical terms, to be honest.
Yep.
But they created two albums that have so much depth that you just want to give yourself to them for the time that they're on. That's an incredible thing to do.
Yeah. So we've got about an hour here, so we've got to do the Fish show. So why don't we kind of wrap this one up? I think they have other albums, which some degree of success on some of those, but I think we really got to the meat and potatoes of the Marillion catalog here. Yeah. So coming up later on tonight, we're going to do the same thing once again with the Fish catalog. And no, not Fish the band, Fish the singer from Marillion. And that's, so we got 9 studio albums to talk about?
Yes, indeed, we do.
So that's coming up next. So hang in there, everybody. We'll see you later on tonight. So for Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So Steven and I'll be right back with ranking the studio albums of Fish. See you shortly. Bye-bye.